This was published in 1948 by C.S. Lewis, called On Living in an Atomic Age. In one way, we think a great deal too much of the atomic bomb. How are we to live in an atomic age? I am tempted to reply, why, as you would have lived in the 16th century when the plague visited London almost every year, or as you would have lived in a Viking age when raiders from Scandinavia might land and cut your throat at night, or indeed as you were already living in an age of cancer, an age of syphilis, an age of paralysis, an age of air raids, an age of railway accidents, an age of motor accidents. In other words, do not let us begin by exaggerating the novelty of our situation. Believe me, dear sir or madam, you and all whom you love were already sentenced to death before the atomic bomb was invented. It is perfectly ridiculous to go about whimpering and drawing long faces because the scientists have added one more chance of painful and premature death to a world which already bristled with such chances and in which death itself was not a chance at all, but a certainty. If we are all going to be destroyed by an atomic bomb, let that bomb, when it comes, find us doing sensible and human things, praying, working, teaching, reading, listening to music, bathing the children, playing tennis, chatting to our friends over a pint and a game of darts. Not huddled together like frightened sheep and thinking about bombs. They may break our bodies, a microbe can do that, but they need not dominate our minds. What the atomic bomb has really done is to remind us forcibly of the sort of world we are living in which, during the prosperous period before, we were beginning to forget. And this reminder is, so far as it goes, a good thing. We have been waked from a petty dream. We've been waked from a pretty dream, and now we can begin to talk about realities. It is our business to live by our own law, not by fears, to follow in private or in public life the law of love and temperance even when they seem to be suicidal, and not the law of competition and grab, even when they seem to be necessary to our own survival. For it is part of our spiritual law never to put survival first, not even the survival of our species. We must resolutely train ourselves to feel that the survival of man on this earth, much more of our own nation or culture or class, is not worth having unless it can be had by honorable and merciful means. Nothing is more likely to destroy a species or a nation than a determination to survive at all costs. Those who care for something else more than civilization are the only people by whom civilization is at all likely to be preserved. Those who want heaven must have served earth best. Those who love man less than God do most for man. Let the bomb find you doing well.
That is a very challenging essay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm struck by a number of things. One, I do think that part of the issue that he raises is something I think about a lot, which is, your own death is something you're wired to avoid under most circumstances. But the extinguishing of your lineage and then ultimately your species is that thing magnified.
Yeah.
Right. You ought to be much more alarmed at the elimination of, your family or your tribe than you are at the prospect of your own death. And the elimination of your species is even worse. And he specifically counsels in there that survival at all costs is not the right answer. But that raises some questions too,
mm-hmm.
right? If one has to compromise their values to get through a bottleneck so that your lineage can continue, surely there are some cases in which that is exactly the right thing to do, and it is not the destruction of those principles.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another way in which he's right. If your species is going to be, a cancer on the universe by virtue of, being a purely destructive, evil force that cares not that it creates suffering, then maybe the universe is just better off without it, right? So anyway, I
also hear it as a counsel against fear and against shutting down life because you are fearful of the newest thing that has arrived that is at risk of taking you out.
Yeah, I agree with this exactly. And I must say, I do a little correction for myself, which is, I find the prospect, I don't find my own death particularly troubling.
I do.
I find your death, the prospect of your death, very troubling. And I find the predicament that I will leave on my death troubling, but I don't find the fact of it troubling. But as you scale up, it gets more and more horrifying
mm-hmm.
to a point, right? If you run the exercise of, all right, the earth is about to be destroyed by some impossibly large force about which nothing can be done.
Is it the Vogons?
Something Vogon-like, or, you know, a large object emerging from, you know, that's been orbiting the sun at some very low periodicity or something like that, right? Somehow that is, even though as it occurred, you would experience a death that would presumably, I mean, unless it was instantaneous, be troubling and painful or whatever else it would be. There's a way in which it's just sort of easy to accept it because there's nothing to be done, right?
I don't think I feel that way.
You don't? Mm-mm. No, gosh, I guess I just found a defect in my personality, but
or mine, or we just disagree. I don't see why there's any reason to assume a defect. I mean, I'd be curious. I don't know. I don't know how, you know, how that would split for most people, or, you know, and it's not clear that there's two positions, right? There are probably a lot of positions, but I think on first pass, hearing that, my reaction, that's not, I don't like the idea of there not just being no future for me, but no future for anyone.
Right. I mean, maybe the difference is, you know, I there's some part of me that has, it needs to just confront the existential to get rid of it. Mm-hmm. Right. Because ultimately, you know, it is all existential. I mean,
yep.
Let's put it this way. There's no justification for the claim that being alive is better than being dead, right? I am firmly convinced that holding on to life is a great idea, but of course I would be, wouldn't I, being the descendant of, you know, 3.5 billion years of creatures that preferred life over death, right? But, you know, is being organized better than being disorganized? Is a crystal better than a puddle? Right? There's just philosophically nothing to do with it. And similarly, there's no lineage is getting out of here alive, ultimately. Right?
Yeah.
In light of that, okay.
He's just going like full and existential here.
No, but I guess, look, first of all, there's a kind of, my grandfather used to rail, I think, against existentialists, right? Because there was a kind of, it was an excuse for not doing things. The fact that it was all futile, right? And so in general, I don't tend to read the existentialist that way. That's more, you know, that hedonism is the excuse existentialism. I agree. There's a bifurcation between the hedonist response to this and another response. And I'm definitely in the other camp, which is, let's put everything into doing this as well as possible, even though ultimately it will be futile.
Yeah. And let's pray if that's your thing, and work and teach and read and listen to music and bathe the children and play tennis and chat to our friends over a pint and a game of darts. Right. Right?
Dear lineage, let us leave it all on the field. Right?
Yeah.
Why not? You have this unbelievably improbed opportunity.
Yeah.
Right?
So what are you saving it for?
Right. So what are you saving it for?
Yeah.
You know,
what are we being asked right now to save it for? As in most of the countries where people are listening to us at the moment, we're being told this just might not end. You might have your activities and your behaviors and your freedoms restricted and restricted and restricted, and it might just go on indefinitely. What for what? Like what?
Right.
What even are you imagining that you're promising us at the end of this?
So
to just go back to what we already had, which we didn't have to ask for.
Right. Why wouldn't we strive to get it right? And recognize, I mean, that's the thing, is at he makes the point very well. At any moment that it happens, whenever it is, whatever it is that's coming for you, at the point that it happens, the point is you want to be worthy of whatever. And he labels it as heaven, and you and I wouldn't do that. But the point is, it's a good proxy for something. You know, did you make good use of your opportunity or not? And not everybody has the same opportunity, so you can't judge everybody by the same standard. Right. But given what opportunity you had, did you make use of it? Right? Yeah. Did you do it well, or did you waste it?
Or did you accept that this moment is so terrifying. And given that what you're being told has with it a vague hint of a promise that isn't even a promise, that if you just do what we tell you to do, it will all get better, you're going to be in stasis for God knows how long.
Well, and maybe this is the thing. And I think, I've been trying to wrestle this into a form that can be conveyed, right? Because it's the kind of thing that either a person already gets it or it's very hard to get it. But the point is, in objective terms, this is a very terrifying moment, right? Mm-hmm. We know lots of highly intelligent people who are now gathering, people who don't know each other, who are gathering around the idea that something terrible is afoot, that we don't know exactly what it is, and that the trouble is going to get worse, right? That's a paralyzing thought for many, but it can be a liberating thought too, right? The point is, this is a moment that is full of meaning. It is full of hazard. And in some sense, I think, if it was a wall of fire, right? But it was just a wall of fire, then the point is, okay, not going into fire, that's the initial instinct, but going through the wall of fire might be the right instinct, right? It might be the only one that is actually defensible if you understood, even not knowing how thick it is, just the chance that it's just a wall of fire and it's not, a landscape of fire. Mm-hmm. It's Beringia, effectively, right? If you didn't know what was beyond the wall of ice, and you didn't have a choice, then the answer is okay. Beyond the wall of ice, if there is such a thing.
Well, this is going to muddle it, but to go back to your first invocation of fire today, it doesn't look like a wall of fire, to which some number of people would be like, okay, I'm suited up. I don't know if I can make it, but I know what I have to do. And this feels more like your Room 101. This feels more like customer service hellscape. Like, what even is this? It's coming from all sides. I'm in it. I can't escape. I can't opt out. What do I do?
But that's it. And I don't know that I can say it, but you've got customer service as the alternative to what might be a wall of fire. Mm-hmm. Customer service will always feel safer than confronting the wall of fire. Always. There's no minute in any day when the wall of fire seems better. On the other hand, yes, if you've got a wall of fire and the idea is, well, I'm just going to resort to talking to customer service, right?
I'll just hang out over here with my customer service
I'll be right over here in room 101 with customer service.
Yeah.
That is not the solution to your problem, right? That is delaying confronting the problem because you can't guarantee that there's anything good that comes from confronting it. On the other hand, we have an opportunity and we are squandering it. And as much as evolution sets us to a game in which its objective is the persistence of genes into the future, that needn't be our objective, right? And I'm going to return to this theme at some point in the future. But I do wonder, the Chinese, and I don't mean the Chinese lineage, I mean the Chinese government, mm-hmm. right? The governing structure seems to have figured something out, right? It's very effective, right? It may have just conquered an important level of weaponry that we're going to struggle to catch up with this hypersonic stuff, among other things, right? It's figured out a lot. Is it worth it? Their system doesn't liberate people. Mm-hmm. And so the point is, let's say it is stronger, better, less easily
better
distracted.
By some objective standards.
Right. Better by an objective standard that we would all agree is good. Like, yeah, getting into the future is good. Maybe it's better at getting into the future, right? But who wants to go into the future that way?
And that's not the only objective standard by which we should measure the value of our lives.
And in fact, what I'm really arguing, I think, is given that objective standard, I'll take a subjective standard. I'll take decent people formulating their own subjective thing and saying, look, I'd rather do something better, aesthetically better, more compassionate, mm-hmm. right? And not be so goddamn effective at getting into the future that we surrender all the special stuff about being a human and we're just some kind of protoplasm that, yes, is still around in some distant location in, the next millennium.
Oh, that's good. I think that's both an excellent place to end and pretty deep and dark.
Just end the podcast. You're not ending.
Okay. No.
Okay.
That's it. I'm out.